Hello everyone, and welcome to a much requested video for me to go over my personal keybinds that I use for the Elder Scrolls Online. So in this video, I'm not only going to be going over my keybinds, but I'm also going to be going over my game settings as well, and I'm going to talk about why you should definitely change a few of the default settings that this game has, and why it would be beneficial to do so. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. We're going to start off by taking a look at my controls, so my key bindings to begin with. And before we go over them, I'm just going to start by saying a big part of the keybinds that I run is to make it ergonomic for my hand. And that simply means that I don't want to move my hand further than I have to, so my keybinds kind of reflect that. So to begin, we've got the move forward and backward with WS, but I do not run A and D to move left and right. I actually use Q and E, and this is simply because I actually have a little bit better reach with my fingers going for Q and E. I have long fingers myself, so I find that it helps to not have the WASD crunch. And then on top of it, because I run my abilities in the 1, 2, 3, 4 A and D slots, it makes it easier for me to reach to all my different abilities than if I had to reach 2 keys going from A to 1, for example. The toggle walk/run key, I actually like to bind this myself, more for RP reasons than anything else. If you want to walk around looking fine instead of running all the time, you definitely want to bind this. But I think at default, there is no bind for the toggle walk/run. Our jump, of course, is spacebar, no change there. I have auto run at F1. I would highly recommend that you guys bind auto run for this game. It's just really nice if you're moving anywhere and you want to check your bag or something. You can click the auto run key, open your bag, your character will continue to move, and you can play with your inventory or look at your gear or whatever. Now, roll dodge. Now, something that I want to say is that by default, you have the combat setting of double tap to roll dodge on. And we'll come back to this page later, but I did want to mention the double tap to dodge. I have this turned off. I would highly recommend that you do not use double tap to roll on this game. Instead of using double tap, a much better approach to roll dodging is to just rebind your roll dodge key to something else. The reason I say you don't want to use double tap is because you're going to be doing a lot of fine movement as you play more and more of ESO, and sometimes you'll double hit that movement key and roll when you don't want to. It is much more reliable to use an actual key for your roll dodge. Now I have the single apostrophe here, and that's actually just what I've bound it to on my mouse. I have a gaming mouse, and I click a side button on my gaming mouse in order to roll dodge. So this is where I have this bound. If you don't have a gaming mouse, clicking down your center wheel on the mouse is actually a fantastic option for roll dodge. Prior to purchasing a gaming mouse myself, that's what I used to do. But in general, I would just highly recommend that you don't use the double tap to roll and you rebind roll dodge to a key of your choosing. Now my attack keys I have not adjusted. We have attack on the left click. We have block on the right click. I've changed my sprint to alt yet again, just moving my sprint around so it's more comfortable for what I'm used to when I game, and that's normally where my sprint key is on my gaming setups that I like to play on my keyboard, regardless of what game I play. Crouch is control. I believe that's the default for crouch as well. The interrupt I have set at the right and left mouse button. Now this one, I left it here because I like doing it this way. I know some people like to have this bound to a separate key. See how it's also bound to T on my keyboard as well. The advantage of binding this to a separate key means that you can bash without stopping your stamina recovery because you don't have to hold block in order to do it. And on top of it, it's easier and more reliable to break a CC if you only have to click one button, not two. Now this ultimately has, I think, no effect once you start playing at really high level. Whether you have to click the 1 or 2 buttons, it's your reaction time that determines whether you'll break it or not. But for newer players, I think just clicking a single button is really awesome, and it might even make your animation canceling weaving easier if you can chain in that bash with a separate key as well. Now my synergy key I have slotted at 4. My ability keys, they only go up to 1, 2, 3, so 4 is my synergy button. Yet again, I chose this because it's very close to my E key, which is my right movement key, so just a nice ergonomic choice there. The weapon swap is the key right above the tab key. That is the default key for our weapon swap, so no changes there. Ability 1, 2, 3 are all set the way that they normally are. I haven't adjusted any 1, 2, 3 abilities. They're on the 1, 2, 3 keys. And then 4 and 5, of course, are my A and D slots. And this is, again, just my preference because I have longer fingers. If you like the WASD, you will instead use 4 and 5 for Q and E if you wanted to mimic something like this. And then my ultimate ability I have at Caps Lock. I like Caps Lock for the ult specifically because my pinky finger clicks it, and my pinky finger is only in control of ultimates, potions, and of course crouching. So I don't have a ton of keys to click on my pinky finger, and just from my personal experience gaming, your pinky finger is often your weakest finger, so I don't like to put too many abilities here. And I like it that we've got the ultimate and the potion on Caps Lock and Shift, because of course we won't be using these super often, so I don't have to do a ton of repetitive clicking with the pinky, and I think that's very important as well. And then of course my Seath and Unseath has been rebound to R. This is kind of an unimportant bind, more like the auto walk for a roleplay perspective than anything else. And then the last two important controls are interaction controls. Interact with the environment and interact with the player. My environment interaction is the F key right next to my D action key, and then player is just below that at V. Now V is kind of a weird choice for me. It's just because I'm used to clicking the V key for interactions. Ideally, I could actually probably go for the C key here because it is less of a stretch for my fingers to go with it. But for the most part, you are only really going to be rezzing a player when you do this in combat. And then outside of that, you don't need to hit this reliably in combat. So this is the one key that I myself would probably rebind if I wasn't so used to playing it the way that it is right now. Alright, so we've gone over the key bindings, and now we're going to talk about some of the general gameplay settings that I also think can make a big impact on how you play this game. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is combat cues, and this by default is on, and this is just going to give you kind of visual cues letting you know when you can bash, interrupt, and do all kinds of different stuff to your target depending on what the cue is kind of telling you. I would recommend you leave this on. Don't turn this off. If you turn these cues off, you're in trouble. You can always set custom colors as well. I don't use this system. I haven't actually used it, but if you want to kind of make it easier for you to differentiate between things, you can set these custom colors as well, making enemies not red. This is kind of important if you're colorblind, to be honest, because if you're colorblind, you can't see the red, and you can always change this to a different color, which will allow you to see it. The double tap to roll, we talked about this. You definitely don't want to use this. If you already are used to using it, I would even recommend turning it off and rebinding your roll key and getting used to not using it. As someone who plays a lot of medium armor, double tap to roll would be devastating to my gameplay. It would add a huge amount of time to every single one of my cancels that have a roll in them, so I would highly recommend changing this if you guys have not already. Now, a fun option we have here, prevent attacking innocents. This is a really great option just for general play because it will prevent you from killing anything that would give you a bounty if you attacked or killed them. So you can essentially kind of turn off the justice system by turning this on, and that's just an option there if you don't want to accidentally attack stuff. Quickcast ground abilities, I highly recommend you turn this on, and this is the same reason as double tap for roll. It essentially saves you an extra click, so you don't have to click your ability and then click with your mouse or click the ability again in order to cast it. This saves you that extra time, allowing you to do faster and smoother gameplay. And then finally, guys, I just thought I'd throw this in here. If you're a newer player, the tutorials by default are on, but if you guys are an experienced player and you're tired of seeing all those tutorials that you know already, you can turn the tutorials off here as well. Now, in our combat settings bar, I have set our resource numbers to the number only. You can do the number, the percent, or both if you want, but it is important that you have some kind of indicator here, I think, so you have just a better idea of how much resource you have left. I really like the number only because then you know if it costs you 4,000 magicka to cast your skill and you have 3,700 magicka, you know you can't afford it instead of seeing like 13%. So this by default is off. There is nothing shown. I would highly recommend you turn on the numbers only at least. Now, the ability bar is something that I did want to talk about too. This is something that displays your skills while you're in combat. I personally would choose never to display my ability bar, and the reason for that is that usually when I'm playing a build, even if it's a newer build, I get the feel for the build and I'm not ever looking at my ability bar. The big reason why I display my ability bar is for you guys, because you guys like to watch my footage, you like to watch my build videos and stuff, and having the ability bar there just gives you more information about what I'm doing and what I'm using. But I would honestly say if you can turn this off, do turn it off. And the big reason I say that is because you won't be tempted to look down at that ability bar, and you'll be focusing more on what's going on in combat, and the moves and skills that you use will become more second nature and reflexive rather than you actively trying to look at your bar to see what you should cast. Of course, you want to leave your active combat tips on. This is just going to give you more information about what's going on in the fight, and that is important. Your ultimate number, I don't have this on. It's up to you if you want to turn this on. I honestly think showing the number is probably the better way to go, but it doesn't really matter because your ultimate, it gives you an audio cue when it's ready anyway. And then for our combat text, incoming damage and outgoing damage is very important for PvP. You want to know how much damage you're taking, and you want to know how much damage you're dealing. Now, I think it's also good for you to select and show your incoming healing as well. You don't really need to do the healing as much as damage, but it is good to have there. And then, of course, incoming and outgoing crowd control, I think, is very important too. I have my incoming crowd control turned off because I'm an experienced player and I know what effects I'm kind of getting hit with when they come in. If you guys are newer to the game, I'd recommend turning both this and the outgoing on. And what this does is yet again give you more information about what's going on in the course of combat, so you know how to react with your character. You'll know when you're off balance, when you're stunned, because you'll get not only the graphical cue from your character doing it, but it'll also say that you've been stunned on your screen as well. And then finally, guys, we have got the buff tracker. And if you are a newer player, I think the buff tracker is absolutely fantastic. But as you play more and more, it becomes less important because your buff management should become almost second nature once you play a build and become very comfortable with it. But for learning a new build, the buff tracker is absolutely fantastic, and I would highly recommend that you turn this on. By default, the buff tracker is not on. You can just put it to always show or automatic, and it'll let you know what buffs you have up, and then you can select which buffs you want to show. The big ones that you want to kind of get rid of if you want to just have a minimized buff UI is the permanent effects, as well as the long duration effects. Any of these effects kind of just clog up your buff tracker, so if you want to have this on, you just flick these two off, and it'll give you the information that you need to know what buffs are on your character during the course of combat. Alright, so for the last bit of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the graphics that you want to play this game on. I PvP, and for me, performance is more important than how pretty the game is. So my graphics that I play on are medium to low settings, and they reflect the fact that I want to have optimal performance. The big thing that I want to mention, though, in the graphics is your view distance slider. You can have a lower particle systems and lower particle suppression distance. All this really does is make it so that you won't see like fire effects that are very far away and stuff like that, but the view distance itself is going to determine how far you can see an enemy player, enemy siege, stuff like that. So you definitely want to have your view distance cranked up to the max for PvP, especially world PvP, so you can stay as situationally aware as possible, and then just do the rest of your settings to kind of make sure that your performance stays in line as well. So there you guys are. That is my key bindings. That's how I like to play this game. Of course, I'm not saying you have to copy these key bindings, but I hope that you guys at least got a few ideas about what you should and shouldn't change about your own key bindings. And if you're lost, you can always use mine as a template. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I create regular ESO content 5 days a week on YouTube, so check that out. You guys can come catch me live on stream. My Twitch, of course, is in a link in the description below. And then finally, guys, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to ESO, and they're free to try for the first 14 days. If you guys want to give them a shot, no credit card to sign up. So there you are. Have a great night, everyone, and I hope to see you again next time.